everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So it had been at this point approximately 10 years after the release of the monumental success The Sixth Sense. And 10 years after his debut film, a lot of people didn't really associate M. Night Shyamalan with good storytelling and good movies, and his popularity were, let's say, dwindling at this point. And I think that this concept that they came up with was actually kind of a genius idea. You would take these relatively unknown directors who were not, household names in Hollywood, and they would benefit, from working with Shyamalan, who would write the scripts, and they would, film these rather inexpensive movies, and they would, get attention because, they would have worked with Shyamalan and the movies would have been good, and, the stocks would have been, elevated because of it. Unfortunately, the Night Chronicles only came out with really one movie. It was called Devil. And why there were never, more releases? Maybe because it was that the first movie was fucking Devil. This movie has a fantastic concept, but it stumbles after about 20-25 minutes in such a spectacular way that there was no way for it to recover after that. But what does it do? What's the concept, and why do I think this movie is so horrible? That's what we're gonna find out today. This is not directed by M. Night Shyamalan, but his fingerprints are all over it. This is Devil. Okay, so basically Devil has the following concept. You have 5 people in an elevator inside of this commercial building, and the elevator gets stuck in between the floors and they're waiting, to be rescued. But the thing is that the light starts flickering and all of a sudden somebody is dead. And they figure out that one of them is a killer. And they can't get out, this is a sealed off space, and they have not been able to get them either up or nor down. The thing is that we also have this cop that is on the outside who is investigating this suicide thing, which, leads him to this building. And he also gets involved with this thing, and he is trying to figure what is going on here. At this point, I was actually, when I saw this movie the first time, really engaged in what was happening. And I was really I wonder where this one is going. I know who is the guilty one. I had already seen that in the beginning of the movie. I don't know how I did it, but this was one of these rare occasions where I knew who was the guilty one. And I was actually correct about it. That normally, brings me to I don't really like this movie anymore because I know exactly what's going to happen. But to their credit, or let's just say anti-credit, they pulled the rug out from underneath me with such velocity that I actually fell on my face and started laughing uncontrollably when they said one piece of dialogue and the movie just fell off a cliff and could never recover from it. What was it? Well, I'm going to slightly explain that, but first, a little bit of a spoiler alert, but I think most people knows about this spoiler, at this point, but I'm gonna do it anyway as a courtesy call. So we have this Latino or Mexican technician or whatever he is, and he seems to be in on this thing, and he seems to know what is going on here, and they're asking him, well, what is going on here? And he, says that one of the people in that elevator is the devil. And when I heard that, I said, no. I mean, it is a representative of the devil, maybe, I thought. No, it is the devil who is in this fucking elevator, and he's killing a bunch of random people because, I don't know, he was bored, I guess. Involving the devil in a movie like this is stupid. A demon, maybe. A ghost, maybe. But the devil? And how does he going to prove that the devil is in there? Well, he takes this sandwich and he throws it up and it falls jelly side down. And then he utters the immortal words that made me belly laugh so hard that I had to rewind it just so I could see that I hadn't seen wrong or heard wrong. When the sandwich lands jelly side down, then you know that the devil is near. What? Where does this come from? This seems like something that, some raving lunatic would come up with and just say that, well, if a sandwich lands jelly side out, that means that the devil is near. Is the devil so busy that he goes around because, you know, some asshole drops a fucking sandwich and it lands jelly side down? I just think that Shyamalan was a bit peeved at the fact that his sandwiches also kept landing jelly side down. And he probably thought that it's gotta be the devil, right? Fuck! It is so stupid. And because of this thing, it ruined the movie to the point where I could only think about, why is the devil here? Why isn't, you know, in some war-torn country or something like that and, you know, reaping the rewards of his evil deeds? No, he's just aiming for a bunch of, you know, people, a security guard and, you know, a guy who sells, you know, mattresses and stuff like that. What the fuck is this? I hated that thing. I hated it. And also, the devil goes around and bites people. There is this sequence when, you know, the lights are flickering and, you know, stuff is happening and somebody has been bitten. Does the devil go around bite people like he is the Tasmanian devil or something like that? Maybe it is the Tasmanian devil who is, you know, the guy in this movie. I don't know. That would have made more sense than the fucking devil. The devil doesn't work as a character in this way. Well, thank you for that. Anyway, once they have sort of determined what the sort of twist is for this movie and what is exactly going on here, I just felt a bunch of, what the fuck is this? And I started to question the logic for this one and the reasoning for this thing. And I was trying to bargain with the movie. Okay, movie, you probably mean this thing, right? No. And, you know, it's going to be this thing, right? No. And, you know, the more they, you know, hammered home this stupid ass nonsense, the more I was convinced that, well, this movie ain't gonna work if they, you know, pull out some kind of a genius twist into this one, but there is no twist. It is exactly what it is set out to be, and the longer it went, the more it felt like a bad Stephen King novella or something like that, or a good Stephen King novella that they hadn't understood what the purpose of it was and just filmed this stupid ass nonsense. I don't know which one of those are worst. The thing is that Devil had a great concept and had a bunch of very good performances, especially Logan Marshall Green, who is in this movie and actually was able to carve out a slightly decent career for himself. This is not something that he will put up on his resume anytime soon, I think. The thing is that once they said that this thing was going on inside of the elevator, I realized that it was essentially the kiss of death for this movie. And when this movie ended in a very Stephen King-esque ending, filled with incredible amounts of weird cliches and odd things that really didn't belong in this movie, I said to myself, this movie is fucking horrible. But then I started to think about it. This movie gives me so much joy to watch because how compellingly awful it is. And I will say this, that the performances in this movie is what keeps it off the, you know, one-digit rating. Because the concept is so good, and the fact is that maybe if Shyamalan would have directed this himself, it might have been even worse because the pace is pretty good. Because one of my criticisms I usually have with Shyamalan's movies is the fact that they move in this absolute snail's pace and nothing ever happens. Because this movie is an 80-minute long movie, it is basically a sprint, and despite the fact that how stupid this entire thing is, we are never bored about it. And because stuff is happening all the time, you kind of forget how awful this movie is in execution rather than concept. So, should you see Devil? Absolutely not. It is only, you know, watchable if you're going to watch it to laugh at how stupid this is. And I guess that you can watch this movie to try to figure out a way of making this movie a slightly bit more palatable. I actually don't know how I would do that, but I'll tell you this. This movie is something that you will not forget anytime soon. Not because it is good, but because it is bad. And in the right, you know, form of bad. The type of bad that you can watch over and over again because how incredibly silly it is. And because how incredibly stupid it is. But I'll tell you this. This is a concept that can work, but it only works, you know, 1 out of maybe 150 movies if you use this element. This was definitely not one of them. At its core, this is a mystery movie and a supernatural thriller / horror movie. Not really the type of movie I'm really excited about, but this is the type of thing that can work. But it is difficult for me really to give this a proper, fair rating, because it is so amusingly entertaining and because the concept is so ludicrously bonkers, I cannot hate this movie in ways that I probably should. And this movie also lacks the suspense that it could have had. After the revelation of what is going on here and the realization of where we're heading, all that suspense they have actually built up pretty well throughout the first 20-25 minutes of this movie. It is like sand through your hands. It just vanishes. And I have no other choice but to give this movie 21 points. But it should consider itself lucky, considering that if I would have given this movie the proper rating that it should have gotten, this movie could have probably ended up like a 6 or 7 or something like that. But because the concept was so strong, and because that the performance were so good, and because that you, for the first 20-25 minutes, actually was very engaged in what's going to happen, it can, lift itself a little bit up from the absolute doldrum and the absolute horribleness that it was heading for. But as I said, this is a very failed product, and I do not recommend it unless you want to laugh about it. So I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.